Well, hello. Every gal needs a cowboy hat.
Scanning the room, you look for a familiar face. Everyone is a stranger. Your heart's racing, you feel nauseous. New plan. You meet 4 new people. Okay, 3. 2? You can handle 2. And then you think, I hate this. This just feels so fake. And before you talk to even 1 new person, you're looking for the nearest exit.
Okay. Crazy. Yo, who invited this chick?
My heart races when I walk into a room full of strangers too. Except it's not anxiety, it's excitement. I'm not thinking networking quota. I'm thinking, look at all these stories. And I get so pumped about talking to people that I don't know.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Woohoo! Okay, welcome everyone. Oh, do we have stories to share today? And you may wonder why I'm wearing my cowboy hat. Well, as I said, everyone needs to have a cowboy hat in their closet. So stay tuned because our guest today, we're going to be talking a bit about that. So most manufacturers don't know how to tell or share their story. So that's where I come in. So I use a 3-step process: sign up, suit up, and show up. My name is Gail Robertson, and I am Chief Curiosity Officer at GailNow. So I teach those in the manufacturing world and in plastic injection molding how to better get out there and, well, share their stories. And on my show, I have guests from various industries and various worlds that come on that are often going to give us tips and ideas to help us, show up both in real life as well as online. And today, oh my goodness, do we have someone who knows how to show up? And without further ado, I want to welcome the one and the only, dun, da, 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 or I should have some cowboy sound. Sarah Scudder is in the house. Woo-hoo!
So I'm sad to say I'm not in my green wig today or my green outfits. I'm working from California for the next couple of weeks. And so everything is packed away in my Austin apartment. So next guest appearance on your show, I will be decked out in my green.
Yes. Well, you know what? That's why I thought I'll bring the cowboy hat, because I know you are adjusting to Texas life, and we've had some chatter on social media. And as my intro said, every girl needs a cowboy hat. Am I right?
Yep. I actually am in the process of getting my cowgirl boots. So I have a pair, but I would call them fake California boots. So I need to get real legit Austin style. And so I'm figuring out what I'm going to get. So yes, I definitely need to have the full outfit, and your hat is a good start.
There we go. Well, I'm going to go, because you're in California, I wanted to just make sure we gave you a, because if anybody does see this from tuning in from Texas, want to know that I am planning to get to Texas one day. It's on my list of places to get to. So we do have, let's start off before we get into the interview. We have comments have already started. I knew today the comments would blow up. So let's just see who we have in the house already. We have Brian Forster, who is, time to buckle in. Brian is using video. He shows up and uses LinkedIn, does some phenomenal stuff. So yes, please connect. And we have, Dan Sweet. So Dan is the marketing manager with Gardner Media and is working on the PT Expo show. I'm working with Dan. So hello, Dan. Very excited because I am going to be at PT Expo and telling stories from the showroom, showroom floor. So exciting times. We have, Katie. Do you know Katie McDermott?
Katie and I are LinkedIn friends. So hello,
yes.
Katie.
Yes, she is amazing. She is one of us in terms of having fun. And yeah, she's done some, I think, shout outs to people. Join us in a few. You won't go. No, you won't regret it. Oh, and then I think you already met Mike Hicks. Thanks for the recent reach, Katie. So Mike is on the board of Canadian Association of Mold Makers. We're on the board together. He does a great golf tournament. So let's see. Oh, we have Katie says, howdy, cowgirl. We have Inger's in the house. Hello, everyone. And we have David Christ. I know you must know David, right?
Yeah, David was on my Manufacturing Woes show yesterday, rocking his blue outfit and his green light in honor of Source Day.
Yes, he was on your show yesterday because I tuned in. I should know that. See, there's so many live shows. I'm like, who's who with a zoo anymore? So we have lots of back and forth chatter. Katie, David, Inger. And Dan says, yep, excited to see you in a few weeks at PT Expo for sure. We have some paging going on. Okay. So what usually happens is during, at various parts, I'll probably stop. I usually encourage people to drop a comment, say hello, ask a question. So we'll kind of have commercial breaks to do that. But let's start in. Sarah, I've been doing some posts. One last person I want to do a shout out. Oh, we've got some new people coming in. We have Christine.
I know Christine.
Yep, you know Christine. Oh, she's amazing too. And we have Chris Granger, who I believe wants to connect with you to talk about some supply chain and various. And I said, definitely tune into the show today. Chris is in the Manufacturing Mafia group with me. So we're like, very cool.
Awesome, Chris. Yeah, feel free to ping me on LinkedIn.
Okay. And then we have excited to learn from these experts. Yes, I'm there we go. Okay, we've got a LinkedIn user, and we have also Kathy Prona. Hi everyone. Do you know Kathy?
Her and I co-host a show every month together called Voice of Supply Chain.
Okay. And then we have Chris, look, okay, people are rolling in. It is yes, it is going to be, I'm sure the comments will be back in the comments shortly because there'll be lots of people tuning in. And even my cat is weighing in this live show today. She's decided to just come in and start talking. So Miss Pippi is her name. Okay, let's start with, as I said, I've been posting some things on LinkedIn. Your profile is amazing as well. Lots of depth to that in terms of your background, everything from marketing, procurement, to direct procurement, to plastics world, to supply chain. But let's go back in time because you actually were going to start out. I'm always fascinated by people's career paths and also transferable skills. So you originally you were modeling, you were in the fashion world. Can you go back and tell that story of how you ended up in procurement? Because I'm sure very few children say, hey, one day when I grow up, I want to work in procurement.
Yeah, let alone be able to even spell the word procurement.
Yes.
It's a mouthful for sure. So I was planning to go into the fashion industry. In high school, I did runway modeling and always felt I kind of had the entrepreneurial bug and the entrepreneurial spirit and thought that I wanted to produce fashion shows eventually. So my plan was major in business and marketing in college. And then I was hoping to transfer to work more on the production side and then eventually open my own company and fashion production agency. So that was kind of the high schooler plan. So I went to a very small school called Sonoma State University in wine country in California, the real wine country, Sonoma County wine country. And I double majored in business and economics, and I did an emphasis in marketing. And first of all, the school was as far from fashion as you could even think of. People wore their pajamas and t-shirts and sweatshirts to class, and I was in my dresses and hats and purses and heels. So I definitely looked like I stood out going to the school that I went to. And I had joined a sorority called Alpha Gamma Delta, and I was president. And when I finished my presidency, my senior year, I said, okay, I have one last hurrah in me. I still have something else that I feel like I want to do. So I co-chaired our big philanthropic event called Lip Jam, where all of the school organizations would perform, and it was like a whole evening production, really fun, and all the money went to diabetes research. And when I decided to do this, I looked at my workload and said, okay, I have, 21 units. I've just got a really demanding academic schedule. And I don't even know really how to procure and buy things. There was all these things we needed to do for the event. So I found a local company that was a sourcing procurement firm that would go out and procure all things marketing for a company, whether that was media, whether that was print, whether that was swag, whether that was apparel. And I said, this sounds like a great idea. Let me just outsource it. It'll make it so much easier. So they took care of all of those things for our event, which was a huge time saver and blessing for me. And when I was done with the event, they approached me about working at their company. And they said that they were looking to potentially start some sort of internship program with the university. They also wanted more females in their company. They felt females were really lacking in the industry and said, hey, do you have an interest? So in my mind, I'm thinking, I have no idea what supply chain and procurement is. And this is as far from fashion as it comes. But I decided to go spend some more time meeting with the team and really assessing the opportunity. And what I realized was if I went and worked for a really, really small company, I would have an incredible opportunity to learn all facets of a business. What does it mean to have great customer success? How do you set up operations programs? How do you do sales? How do you do marketing? How do you implement technology? And so I decided that I was going to take the opportunity. I thought it would be an incredible journey and learning experience for me. So I joined the company as soon as I graduated and was there several years. And one of the things that I immediately did was go and assess the market and really helped pitch the CEO of the company on shifting our business model to be a more technology-led company from a marketing procurement perspective. So I was able to really help set the strategy and pivot how we went to market and what we did from a sales perspective. But really what I did with that role is I got into marketing procurement. And marketing procurement back in the day was not really talked about or not very common. And what marketing procurement is, it's a function that helps people in marketing and in procurement source and procure all things that marketing leaders need. Whether that's media, whether that's MarTech, which is marketing technology, whether that's swag, whether that's apparel, whether that's events. So there's lots of different things that fall in that. So the first part of my career, I actually spent in the marketing procurement space. And now, which I'm sure we'll get into, I've now pivoted into the direct side of the industry. So completely different pivot and shift. So it's kind of fun to look at the industry now from a more full circle lens.
So that's really interesting. What would you say are your key transferable skills that took you from that fashion world through to even what you're doing now? Like if you had to list out some highlights of skills, because sometimes, I ended up working in insurance, and same thing. Most people that end up working in insurance never as a kid said, I want to be an insurance broker. I want insurance marketing. You kind of almost just kind of land there one day. And, I went from journalism to running a B&B to a fundraiser to then a marketing manager. So in insurance, how would you say, and for me, the skills all went back to curiosity. Like I've always been someone ask questions, curious, and I love learning something new. What would you say is your key transferable skills that took you from along that journey?
So I think I realized early on that sales and marketing need to work together. I think at a lot of organizations, so when I started in my career, our leadership didn't even believe in investing in marketing at all. We had zero marketing budget. And so there's a lot of value in sales and marketing collaborating and working together. And I think the role of a marketer has changed. And one of the skills that I've learned is the importance of demand generation and how to turn marketing into a demand generation team, which should really drive the growth of the company. I would say the other thing that I learned, and I don't even really know how to summarize this skill, is the importance of getting to know your customer. It is shocking to me when I talk to marketers who never spend time with their customers. How can you set a strategy? How can you create content? Where do you even know where to put your content if you don't know where your customers are spending their time and where they're going to get information? So I think a transferable skill that I learned was the importance of spending time in getting to know your customer to drive your strategy.
That is, if it's almost like not having a goal, not knowing where you're going. And I said, sometimes you may want to just jump in your car and go somewhere, but that's not necessarily going to get you to the proper destination, because then how much gas do you have? And I always use that analogy of getting ready to go on a trip. If you're getting ready to go on a trip, you need to know where you're going, plan out your roadmap, decide how much food you're going to need, where you're going to stop. And so, yeah, I think it sounds like you have now. I would guess that you are a fairly methodical, process-oriented person.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say I am, but at the same time, I also value creativity and doing things unique and different.
Yes. See, this is why we get along too, because I am heavy more on networking, meeting people, connecting, a little lighter on process, but I do like process and I like planning. Because one time someone said to me, they thought I was the person that going on a trip, the day you're going on the trip, you're throwing everything in a suitcase. And I'm like, oh, that just gives me stress thinking. No, I have to start on a big trip 2 weeks ahead, making my list, making sure I have everything wired, everything. And then a weekend, there's a whole process, which often surprises people about me because I'm more process oriented than what I may appear, because sometimes it looks like I'm just flying by the seat of my pants. And sometimes I am, but it's because a lot of times I'm doing that because I have some experience in that area. But I do like a plan. I like process more than, yeah. We have this. I want to let's go to the comments for a minute, because Katie said, did she just say process, David? Process? Because David is the king of process, man. When I listen to him talk about it, because he makes it so simple. He makes it sound almost like too easy too, because it's simple, not easy. I think that's the other thing, because you have to commit time to it. We have Bob Feathers is in the house.
Hey,
Sarah
Bob.
Truth bombs, relationships and conversations matter. So true. And then Katie said, sales and marketing work together, ? Yes, and I think I'd also say sales, marketing, and operations. When you have everybody working together, that's where the magic can really happen. It's just, and I learned that in insurance world, is that you really have to understand too the operations and why they do things. Because I used to have great ideas, but you also had to look at how that would play out in the insurance world. So, and then Christine said, it seems like no one in supply chain arrives in a straight line. No, that is. So
I do think it's one of the most random industries, in that people just fall into it from such unique, just random happen chance. It's very rare that somebody nowadays, there's more programs in universities for it, but back in the day, no one thought about it or knew what supply chain or procurement was.
And, just since we were talking about the comments and what you just said about not arriving in a straight line, I mean, that's the value of transferable skills. And what's happening over the comments right now is a good example too of, there's such a mix here today of people commenting, connecting with one another. And that's also where the magic happens, when you can decide not to just stay, sometimes you need to stay in your lane. I've been told that once or twice, to stay in my lane, but sometimes the magic happens when I get outside my lane a bit and, pass and go check in different places. And when we talked about this earlier, I'll do a shout out to Sam Gupta, who I remember was Kurt Anderson connected with him. And I remember talking about a Saturday morning and I was like, ERP, what the heck is this world? And I have never regretted that Saturday morning conversation, because it has led me into meeting, well, someone like yourself, right? That I would have been maybe like marketing procurement seems so intimidating. So let's talk a bit about like that word procurement and just a bit more about that. So people that may not understand it, sort of like a vague idea. Can you explain in 20 words or less? No, I'm kidding. Just you can explain procurement easily for some of us.
So I like show and tell. So I'm gonna use my Beats headphones as our first example. So procurement or supply chain, you can sometimes use the words interchangeably, is the process of buying everything that we need to bring this product to life. So there are two different types of procurement. There's something called indirect, and then there's something called direct. So my lipstick here, in order for the company to make this lipstick, they are going to buy parts and materials that actually go into making this product. That is called direct. That means it's directly going into the item that the company is selling. Then we have a source day pen here. The company who makes this pen, who is spending money on marketing to sell this pen and is spending money on facilities to house the corporate staff or contingent labor or office supplies, that is called indirect because that is not directly going into this pen. So two totally separate types. So some companies are going to have both. They're going to buy direct, again, the parts that are going into this, my earbuds. And then they're also going to buy indirect, things like marketing or facilities or contingent labor or travel. And then some companies only buy direct. So Gail, you come from insurance. Insurance isn't selling a physical product. Mm-hmm. So 100% of the spend from an insurance company is called indirect. So in the first part of my career, I was in the indirect space, in particular in marketing, like we talked about. And one of the categories that I got pretty involved with was sustainable packaging. And through that journey, the company that I was at had software that we sold to companies to help them buy packaging and print. And so in the sustainable packaging space, we got into some really cool, interesting things about what's happening in the environment. How can companies have more sustainable practices in regards to supply chain and procurement? What can they do to do better for the environment and still keep pricing in check, right? Because if my Hydro Flask water bottle all of a sudden doubles in price, my consumer may not be able, to afford that.
Okay. No, keep going.
And then now, in my new role, I joined the Source Day team about 4 months ago. I'm now in the direct side. So now we're actually selling software to companies that are procuring and buying direct spend.
Okay. I love the show and tell of the plastics and the pen. That's very visual. I want to go back to the AirPods or the buds because I work in the world of mold making. And what a lot of people don't realize when we're talking about something like this, it's something I've learned is that there has to be tools made with steel to make so that the plastic can be poured in, and there's blow molding, injection molding, all different types of mold. Which is so in the world I come out of, we talk about the importance of the people who make things that make things, and that's often I have learned now what supply chain really means because there's a whole process to get us to our end product. And I had purchased a new vehicle last summer. They told me it'd be in November. It turns out I couldn't get it till February of this year. So that's all because of a whole trickle down supply chain. And because I understood that, I wasn't upset. I said, I understand. I know it's going to take longer to get to it. Now, in the AirPods example or the Buds example, I know getting the brand names, we don't want to get those mixed up too, because they have marketing people probably. Wait a minute, those are. See, I've got AirPods in.
Mine are Beats brand.
Beats, okay, Beats brand. So from procurement, thank you for that explanation, because I know a lot of people on the call today, they're from marketing and the worlds they work in, to really understand those multiple layers. And I know there might be some sales people on here too. And I think it's, if anybody here in the sales realm, please speak up and say hello, because we are, especially in my mold making salespeople, if you're out there, please drop a hello, because I'm sure people want to say, know who you are. So let's go into the world of plastics, because I know that's the world you came out of. And the one thing I think that anybody that wants to work with you, I would say that your greatest strength is your diversity of your wealth of experience and your background. And I know when I'm dealing with anybody in any company that I'm working with, I always find there's such a great value when people have that background of different industries, because you bring to the table so much more knowledge. So let's talk about plastics, because as I mentioned, I'm going to be attending PT Expo, Plastic Technology Expo. And a lot of people have, I came from a background that would have thought, banning plastics, yes, that'll just cure the problem. Let's ban plastics, and then we won't have any more plastics in our ocean. We won't be ingesting crap from plastic. And that was because I was not curious enough. So I've become very curious about the world of plastics, because when I look around a room and I look everywhere, I go, we can't ban plastics, because what do we do then? So I'm turned over to you to explain why we may need to look at plastics differently.
Yeah, and so to be very clear, when Gail's talking about my background in plastics, so again, at my previous company, we did a lot in the sustainable packaging space.
Yes.
And so what we did was help companies source and procure and buy, set up more sustainable packaging programs. So we would look at and assess, okay, here's what you're doing for packaging today, and come back with recommendations, potentially help them source and procure and come up with more sustainable packaging. And a big part of what my team and I did was looking at, is plastic good or bad for specific companies, and why? And I think there's a big misnomer, and a lot of this is brought on by the media that just assumes that all plastic packaging is bad, and we should just completely ban plastic packaging. And that's actually not the best decision in some cases. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, one, why plastic is actually harmful, and then how we actually can benefit from plastic. And then I'll close out with some tips that, I think could be useful for any of the listeners that are in sustainability or just wanting to learn a little bit about plastic. So plastic is harmful. One of the biggest reasons is that it harms the wildlife. This often results in injury or death. Sea creatures are particularly at risk, and turtles are often known to choke on plastic bags, which they mistake for jellyfish. Fish eat microplastics, and then the fish end up in the seabird's stomach and on the plates of humans, and then we all ingest harmful toxins. From a landfill perspective, plastic bags can take anywhere from 10 to 100 years to degrade. So that's a huge, huge challenge, in that they take so long to disintegrate. Now, how we actually benefit from plastic, and again, I want to highlight this because I don't think this is talked about enough. Plastic helps us protect the environment by reducing waste, lowering greenhouse gas emissions, saving energy at home, at work, and on the road. Plastic insulation, sealants, and other building products are making our homes significantly more energy efficient while reducing costs for heating and cooling. And not all plastic packaging is bad. We should try to avoid single-use plastic, but multi-use plastic packaging can actually be better for the environment than single-use recyclable packaging. And one of the reasons why plastic packaging, and I have a bag sample here as an example. This is probably the most common thing that we've all seen before in regards to packaging is something like this plastic bag. So when we're talking about plastic bags, they can be really, really hard to recycle. So only good quality plastics can go through the recycling process. Recycling facilities are spread out unevenly. What does this mean? In some areas, recyclable plastics cannot be recycled because there's no machinery that will allow for efficient selection and recycling. New machinery has not been developed because there's not enough money in this right now for people to care. And most plastic packaging is not collected for 4 major reasons. The first is the lack of clear instructions printed on the plastic. Consumers don't know how to properly dispose of their plastic packaging, so they don't. They just throw it in the trash. And I can say I was in the packaging industry doing this for a living, and I often got packaging that I didn't even know what to do with. So you really, if it's not easy for a consumer to understand how to dispose of it, it's going to go in the trash. The second is different cities and towns have different plastic recycling rules. So there's no one uniform standard, which is very confusing to the consumer. So Gail, right now I'm in Danville, California. My recycling facilities and rules here are very different than my house and apartment in Austin, Texas, right? So no universal standard, even between states, let alone throughout the US. The third reason is recycling is not just about consumers separating used plastics, paper, metals, and glass into the right bin. It's about markets for our used goods. And I think this is really interesting. So there's a group of researchers that decided to figure out why most plastic that is recycled in the Nordic countries eventually finds its way into the trash. And the answer that they found from their research was it's not profitable enough to be used to make recycled products. So what does this mean? The biggest obstacle they found is that there's not enough profit to make new products from the used plastic. It's more profitable to burn used plastic with other waste in an energy recovery plant to make electricity than to actually recycle the plastics. And the fourth is the market for recycled plastic simply right now just doesn't work. People who have recycled plastics to sell and people who need different types of plastics have a hard time finding each other. And that's because the market for reusable products is so fragmented. And I'll say one other thing, which I think is really useful to people. So next time you get a plastic bag, I encourage you, let's see if I can show this here. You're going to see these arrows that make a triangle. So all plastic bags should have this somewhere on it. Oftentimes it's on the bottom, and this is a Sprout bag. For some reason, they actually have it on the side by the handle. But what you want to do is look at the number that's in the middle of the triangle. And this is called a resin identification code. And this is used to help recycling plants sort materials. The numbers range from 1 to 7. And this tells the recycling facilities what kind of plastic it is and how it should be processed. So the number is very, very important. Number 1 is the best number you can have. So if you have your bag and you have a number 1 in your triangle, what that means is that is the most common type of plastic that's going to be able to be recycled. So a 1 means it's highly likely that your plastic bag or your plastic packaging, you're going to be able to recycle it. A number two means this is things like a milk jug, laundry detergent bottles, oil, motor oil bottles, some shopping bags. It's a little tougher than the material used in number one, but it's almost just as common. So a number two is also really good. It means that a lot of recycling facilities are going to be able to recycle your packaging. Anything past a 1 and 2 gets pretty challenging, and it's highly likely that your local facility is not going to be able to recycle that packaging. So you may think, awesome, I see a recycling symbol on it, I'm going to recycle this. But what happens is when it gets to the recycling facility, they actually can't recycle it because they don't have the right equipment. Again, there wasn't the R&D to develop it because there's not enough demand. It actually still winds up in the trash. So what can consumers do? You call your local recycling facility and say, what numbers on my plastic packaging do you accept? And which of those can you actually recycle?
Wow. You know what? When I listen to you, I'm like, oh my God, because we think and I see people dump everything in kitchen sink sometimes in their recycling bins. And I'm someone who does try to keep up, but I'm sometimes unsure, like, does this go in and like, the plastic from the cooked chickens? And I was like, I put it in, but I'm like, now I'm going to have to go check because I think that's borderline. I'm not sure if that's allowed, but you know what? One of the things too that I think will be, and if Dan's still on the call, anybody who wants to know more about this should definitely go register at Plastic Technology Expo show. You can use my code GAIL, and because there is lots of digital resources. So I'll put some information. I think it's on my LinkedIn. There's a clip I did as well as on Twitter. But I know everyone from the plastics world is going to be at the show. So everything, and they're going to be talking about 3D through to recycling and disposal through to use. And I want to go back because it's time for some comments, and I want to do a shout out to someone that's here from Cavalier Tool and Manufacturing. Hello, Brian. Brian is going to be taking a bit of the lead at the show at PT Expo. Hello, Brian. Brian comes from estimating, but is also working more on the sales side of things as well now. And full disclosure, Cavalier is also a client I work with. So hello, Brian. I know Brian's world is very busy, so that he stopped in. I did a shout out to him, so thank you for stopping by, Brian. And Cavalier Tool is, they do, they make the tools, so they make the things that make things. And we have here a comment. It's a LinkedIn user. I'm not sure who this is, but they said injection molded parts have a long lifespan and are lighter weight than other materials. And one of the things that I think that you mentioned, Sarah, is the whole idea of, research and prioritizing this. And I think now there is starting to get more attention. And as I put a post on this, I said, I'm a recovering journalist. And one of the things that, unfortunately, what happens with the media is that I have a sign up in my office that says, be curious, not judgmental. And I don't think there's any intent to be judgmental, but when we're not curious enough, we're not digging enough to ask the why. And I find this in so many issues in our society right now. We're not asking why. So if plastics are being banned, we need to ask why, because that's really not the solution. And we could have a whole, in fact, I probably will have a future show digging into more on this about plastics, because the easy answer is to ban. But I always say it's a bit like saying no sex education means there aren't good. I mean, you have to educate, you have to be able to get people talking about this. So thank you for maybe lighting a spark about this topic. Packaging, I think we all know, and I know you've talked about this, people sending, you get a package the size of a fridge box for a small pen or a box. And I've seen that happen where I get it's way out of proportion. And I know you've talked about this too, about people, I think, using popcorn. There's other ways to look at, what you put in packaging too. So
yeah, and I think it's important to kind of close out our plastic conversation. So there's things called multi-use plastic that allow organizations to maybe use something 20 or 30 times. And that often can be more sustainable than using one-time packaging that then has to be recycled. So it's really important to look at the entire life cycle of the process of the consumer and what's involved, because you're right, just banning plastics is not necessarily the right answer. And I used to talk a lot about sustainable packaging, and two of the things that I would always mention is there are a few things that people can do really cost effectively to make their packaging more sustainable, and this may or may not involve plastics. The number one thing is making your packaging durable so your product does not get damaged in transit.
Mm-hmm.
So think about the last time you got something at your house and it was damaged, and then you have this whole process of, do you have to send it back? And then does the company ship you a new one? Think about all the waste created in that process. Or if they don't have you ship it back, you now have generated extra waste because you have to dispose of the product, dispose of the packaging, and then they may ship you another one. So number one thing you can do is make your packaging durable. And in some cases, that may mean you need to use some plastic in your packaging to be able to do that. And the second thing is minimizing returns. So this goes back to how you market your product, and a lot of the returns are now generated by e-commerce. So think about, does your marketing online accurately reflect the product? Are the pictures accurate? I mean, I've ordered products that look nothing like the photo.
Mm-hmm.
Are the dimensions accurate? Is it a correct explanation? So those are two things that anybody listening here today, whether you're a consumer or whether you're at a company that's shipping products, can do to be more sustainable. And again, that may involve using some plastic in your packaging.
Yes, that is, I think it's like anything. It's responsible use of plastic, just like responsible use of a lot of things, right? I mean, we talked about this earlier too. I always said, people sometimes will say social media is bad, social media is good. There's alcohol is good, alcohol is bad. I mean, it's really use of it. And I often say too, a knife can be great for cutting things, but a knife can kill someone. Like you can use a knife as a weapon. So it's all about proper use. And I think we need to educate more. And great discussion. Let's head over to the comments for a minute, just because there's a few people I want to recognize, and some new people have entered. We had John, one of my favorite, John.
Oh, hi, John.
He is just, I mean, hunting the relationship. He does that so well. He comes to just about every one of my shows. I've talked with him. He's brilliant. He's a brilliant dad. He's coached. Like, here's someone who shows up. He didn't even know, I think, how to do some, I think was it basketball? Like he jumped in because they didn't have a coach, and he started, and I'm always in awe of people that do things like that. Get outside their comfort zone, jump in and do something, even if they're not comfortable with it. And then you learn. So thank you for being here, John.
John was at our show yesterday too.
Yes, he is. He definitely hunts the relationship. He lives his brand, that's for sure. Oh, and we mentioned, so I think this is when we were talking. Way to go, Sarah Manufacturer. She is speaking my language. I had a call with Anna. We talked. Oh my gosh, she ended up doing a post about a recipe book that I think her brother had made. It was their mom's favorite recipes. And it was, we talked about food, we talked about cooking, we talked about process. And then I think near the end, we talked a little bit about kind of the work he did.
One of my all-time favorite supply chain leaders, and she comes from packaging. She spent most of her career in supply chain sourcing and setting up packaging programs. So super, super knowledgeable.
And here she says it. One is PET mostly, two is HEPE, high density poly. There we go. Bam. Got to save that comment. I'm putting that aside for my future blog on this, because there's numbers and there's such, and I will say sometimes I look at something and sometimes they'll say something, they have the arrows because it's been from recycled plastics, but you can't recycle it. That's trickery. Because I think, I see those 3 arrows and I think I can put it in my blue box, and
exactly right.
Yes, we have much to do. And this is where marketing and sales and operations need to work together, because proper labeling is so important, because we have to start thinking about the end user and changing the world. I'm also someone who wants to change the world. So I think like you. I am late, but I'm here. See, another. Yeah, another wonderful, amazing human being. And then Bob Feather says the plastic conversation is fine. Okay, great, thank you, Bob. Part of the show is really also about, it's also exercising. We're going to talk about this, my curious brain. So talking to Sarah, I'm sitting here today just like, wow, I feel like I'm getting like I'm sitting in a class of like getting access to the guru of this and listening intently. Anna says only 4% of circular is controlled by manufacturing. 4%. Okay, can you explain that? I need that explained. 4% of circular economy is controlled by manufacturing. I don't know.
Yeah, so what Anna's talking about, there's a big movement now, and Sneha, who you just showed as well, is really big on this, is making things come full circle. So start to finish and then going in a circle with everything that you're buying and using. So creating the product, shipping the product, using the product, and then what can we do after that to bring it full circle?
That's very fascinating.
So an example of something like this that I posted about last year. So H&M created a packaging. I can't remember if it was a bag or a box that turned into a hanger. So you opened your item and then you actually used the packaging in your closet ongoing, so nothing was wasted. That's kind of an example of what we mean by circular economy.
I love that kind of stuff. I love when you get something that's a bag or box that you can reuse in a different way. Because I joke, I always say, I'm Scottish, so I hate throwing stuff out. So I will try to find a use for everything. But I remember when I lived at a previous house and someone came in to help me move, and they're like, I had saved every plastic container and I did have to get rid of them, but it was like, I was like, well, I might reuse it. So they were stacking up in my basement. But yeah, sometimes you have to get rid of those things. But I am more aware of trying to buy things, instead of smaller containers, bigger, like multi-use things, as you mentioned. And Anna, yes, another mic drop moment that you shows lack of education in consumer space. Yes. And that really is about, we need to make some changes politically. This is about, as I said, educating, doing more shows like this, but then how do we advocate to make change? And I think at PT Expo, I'm very excited because I'm going to be talking to some people about that and the changes we need. Another shout out, Chris Logan, who comes from more likely the finance, insurance background, said great information. So thank you. We have lots of back and forth sharing. Hellos back and forth. And Anna's got plastic is most efficient use of packaging and yet the most understood.
Yes.
Misunderstood. Very true. We have Katie had to go because she's off to her webinar. And we have, my name is not showing up. Hi, Sarah. I'm Walter Haddix. Okay, Walter. Well, hopefully we
Walter.
can connect on LinkedIn. Yes. Do you know Walter?
I'm not sure if him and I are connected. Walter,
Okay.
if we're not connected, feel free to shoot me a note.
Okay, we got some love from Anna. Love you, ladies. We love you too, Anna. And we have Sneha says circular is about monetizing waste, unlike lean that talks about minimizing waste. There's some. I'm going to go back and save some of these lines for a blog because these are things that are making my brain go click, click, click. It's all about the consumer. This is what the circular talk to me, Gail. It's about consumer education. Yes, Anna, we'll talk more about that. And then we have David weighing in. Eduardo Martinez has some tremendous insights on circular manufacturing. I had him on my podcast and we shared some insights and was just blown away. Okay, thank you, Dave. My list, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that, our podcast list. I'm sure, Sarah, you're the same. I just always feel like I'm always behind. I'm like, I'm going to go back and listen to these. But I do know Eduardo from, I believe he's in our WPS Rockstar happy hour. So have to connect more with him. So Sneha, so let your products be of value for as long as possible. And then a waste from one industry could actually be of value for some other process or industry, which is when waste becomes value. Get your product done in smaller circles. This, I think, is really interesting and really jives with how my brain works, because how can we reuse things? How can we find ways to make, that waste into using somewhere else? Now, what I do know from my mold making world is that as much as we could say, oh, let's use recycled plastic for molds, but the problem is tools are built for certain types of plastic and work. I look at every time I go look at a mold or a tool that's be prepared for the plastic print, I'm always like blown away by how many hoses in the water and the air valves, and it's just it hurts my brain cells because I go, this is the massive amount of tool for a small piece of plastic. And the other thing is, during COVID, Cavalier was doing work on a hand sanitizer dispenser, and I'm thinking, okay, it's like, part one, part two, and Tim said there's like 32 parts. I'm like, what? 32? So now I'm always looking at those dispensers and thinking,
and that's direct spend, right? Yeah. They're buying the parts and materials that are going in the end product.
Yes, 32 parts. So I look at everything now differently. And then there's blow molding, which is different than injection molding. So yeah, I just it is, the more that we're in this world, I think this is why, though, I feel for some of the consumers, because before I got into this world, and my background was as a journalist, and sometimes as journalists we see just like it's the quick hit. How can we go out and cover the story quickly? And there's not a lot of time to do any more digging, and that's very sad for our whole world. That's a story for another day, but I am doing a case study looking at that, about comparing mainstream versus social media versus alternative media, because there really is different messages that we get depending on what media we are following. Okay, so we've talked about transferable skills. We've talked, and you know what? We're running out of time, but I knew this would happen because we go down that plastics rabbit hole, and it's so fascinating. But let's talk about, maybe to wrap up for people, about how you use LinkedIn. And if you could summarize sort of the LinkedIn in 90 days, give some highlights, maybe for people listening, about how you've taken topics like procurement and plastics and packaging and made it into something that people actually want to follow you and talk to you, because you don't just talk about plastics and procurement. So how do you use LinkedIn?
So first off, I consider social media to be something called dark social. So I actually call it dark social because attribution software doesn't do a good job of tracking the ROI. So what do I mean by that? If I am at a larger company and I'm using a system like Salesforce or something else out there that's going to track activity and track data and metrics, it's very hard to do that with social media, in particular in LinkedIn, like having software track the value of people commenting, the value of people reacting, the value of reading the comments and using that to drive additional content and strategy at a company. So that's why I call it dark social. If you follow me online, you'll see me mention it a lot. I use the hashtag dark social. And I think that the second thing that's really important to note about dark social is different platforms make sense for different people. I have invested significantly in the last 3 or 4 years in LinkedIn because that is where my buyers are. But if I was at a different company or in a different industry, I may not be prioritizing LinkedIn. So it's really important as a marketer, as a business owner, as somebody in sales, to go do your research and figure out where your buyers go to get their information. Where do they hang out? Where are they going to do their research? And then based off that, you want to prioritize producing value add non-salesy content and getting it in front of those people on those channels. So for me, I've done my research, and right now today, the buyer that's going to buy our software at Source Day is on LinkedIn. A lot of them are, more than any other channel. But another company maybe should be prioritizing YouTube or prioritizing TikTok or prioritizing Insta. So I want to be very clear that just because I'm prioritizing LinkedIn does not mean I'm saying that everybody should prioritize LinkedIn. Now, if you are a heavy LinkedIn user and you've decided that that makes sense for you, the second thing I would recommend is don't try to do several platforms at once. Just focus on LinkedIn and do it really, really well. So I have friends who dabble in Facebook, they dabble in Insta, they dabble in LinkedIn and they don't really get results because they're not spending the time and energy that they should be to really master one channel. So for me, LinkedIn is my channel. LinkedIn is what I do and what I prioritize. Once you've figured out your channel and you're crushing it, awesome to add a second, but don't try to do all of it at the beginning. So I'm going to talk about some tips that I have found for those that are on LinkedIn and have found out that that's where their buyers are hanging out and want to get more out of LinkedIn. First thing you should do is every day you should be posting. Not once a week, not twice a week, not just on the weekdays. I post at least once a day, 7 days a week, including the weekends. So block out time in your calendar like it's a meeting to write and do a LinkedIn post. It's not an afterthought. It's a strategy. It's part of your marketing plan. It's part of your content distribution strategy. So put it in your calendar, treat it like a meeting. Don't cancel it. Don't change it. And people that tell you LinkedIn is a business platform and you should only post Monday through Friday, absolutely not true. Somebody told me that and I said, okay. And then I started posting on the weekends and I actually get the best results on my weekend posts. So Saturdays and Sundays are really, really great days to post on LinkedIn. When you do a post on LinkedIn, doing long form content works. So I've also had people say, nobody spends time to read anything, only write a couple sentences. My highest performing posts are the longest posts. So I take time to really write out lots of detailed information about whatever subject it is that I'm talking about it. So spend time being thoughtful and writing something long and detailed. The other thing is in your posting, people don't want to click on a link to have to go read another article. So what I do is if we post a new article on our website, I recap that content in the post and I make it so they can read the post and never have to go reference the article, because that's an extra step that most people aren't going to take. I know for myself, when I'm reading on LinkedIn, I don't want to be clicking and having to go read other articles. I want all the content in the actual post.
On that, one of the things that I've noticed that I know Greg Mischio, I want to do a shout out to him, he does really well is he'll do highlights and then, because he does long form blogs, but then I'll go read the blog because I'm so interested, right?
Absolutely. So if I write out a really detailed summary or I provide value add, I may say, link here, click here if you want to read the full post. But you want to have enough information in the post so that people would want to click it and spend the time to go read something else. The other thing that I'll say is changing up the type of post that you do. So polls outperform any other post on LinkedIn right now by 400%. So make sure you have some polls in your mix. The second highest performing post right now on LinkedIn is carousels. And a carousel is, well, you'll make slides in something like a Canva and you'll load it so it's a scroll through so people can scroll through and look at different facts or images. I recommend having 3 to 5 scroll throughs in the carousel. And then doing some video, some picture, and some posts without anything. I do a lot of text only posts that perform very, very well. So you don't have to have a video, you don't have to have an image in order for the post to perform well. So I know we've only got about a minute left, Gail, so I'll end it there.
So, okay. I know we could do a whole show on this, and I'm going to probably drop a link. You did a really great podcast about the 90 days LinkedIn, and I might put a link to that because it was really good. I have scrolling costs. People could go to sourceday.com. I did the hashtag manufacturing maven is up on the screen. Let's end with, how do you exercise your curious brain?
By always asking why and never accepting the status quo.
Okay. That is great. And I know we talked about, you listen to podcasts, you have a favorite podcast, and So are you a book reader, or are you more podcast, more short articles?
Yeah, so reading books has never been my thing.
Mhm.
So don't ask me to read a book. It may not happen. But my favorite podcast is called The State of Demand Gen, which is a marketing podcast that Chris Walker does. The content and things that he produces, I think, is just incredible. He's a brilliant marketer. And a lot of the things that he talks about and does, I've implemented at SourceDay.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. I'm just going to finish up with a few comments here because I want to just welcome a couple of people, and then make sure you follow Sarah. You can follow her on LinkedIn, and then, just go search her name on podcasts and listen away. I tell you, if you want to just have your brain blow up, go do that. We do have Cynthia's in the house. Cynthia's excellent. So Cynthia, I do some work with her in writing. She did writes in the manufacturing mold making world. We had Dan Bigger. He's made it for a bit. Had a meeting. He is a juggler guy too. So I always say when he's selling this, he stops by, and it's great to see him. We had Christine said sort of call, so she's watching closed captioning. I love that we had. Oh, someone else that's here. I want that you two must meet. Simi Tierra, her mother Kim Tierra. Both Kim and Simi were on my show. They have Acetronics. Simi, amazing young woman coming up in manufacturing. Can't say enough great things about the Tierra family, and Simi is very fun. Simi and I did a TikTok together. I'm all about, I agree with you, I'm really focused more on LinkedIn. Twitter's always been my favorite platform. And I was starting to do TikTok, but you know what it does? It sucked me in too much. So I had to go off that for a bit. I want to circle back to it eventually, but I know people say, see, we could rock TikTok, but the thing is, it's very video, and you have to do editing, and it's a heavy lift that I knew I had to get out of for a bit because it was sucking too much time. And that's the other thing, going back to process, right, is that you can't do everything. And I know we are like that. I think we try to do everything, and we have to rein ourselves in, right? Thank you, Sarah. Is there anything else you'd like to wrap up about anything else that you have upcoming? Anything else about how best to reach you?
I'll say encourage anybody who's joined today that wants to chat about anything supply chain related. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Always looking to add value and help as many people as I can. I host 3 LinkedIn live shows a month, so I'll just give those a shout out. Women in ERP is the first Tuesday of every month. Manufacturing Woes is the second Tuesday of every month. Some of our guests here today have actually been on the show or are scheduled guests. And then I co-host a Voice of Supply Chain show with ISM New Jersey the 3rd or 4th Wednesday of the month. So if any of those are of interest to you, just ping me a note and I'm happy to send more details.
I bet, Andy. I do my weekly show, and that is, I know how much goes into it, but you definitely bring in a lot of great people on your show. So maybe actually after, if you want to drop any of that, the links in the comments, because I think from this show, people may come, obviously, if they stayed through for the show, they're interested and would like to maybe pop into some of your shows. So, okay, I'm going to send you to the green room. I'll see you there shortly.
Thank you.
Whew. I am like, my head right now, I feel like, wow. I mean, there's so many things that Sarah's knowledgeable from, as I said, from procurement to plastics to packaging, and also how she uses LinkedIn and social, the dark social, which, like I said, if you just Google her or follow her name on podcasts, you'll see some other information that you can learn more about her. And if you'd like to learn more about me, definitely here on LinkedIn. You can visit my website as well at GailNow. But most of the updated information is on Twitter and LinkedIn. And, if you need help or know someone that needs help in the manufacturing world, especially in the plastic world, that needs help telling their story, make sure to get in touch. And I would love to connect with them. If you aren't going yet, you may want to make sure you're signed up, because you can actually sign up for the digital portion of PT Expo. Please stop by. You can, when you go register, use my code GAIL. There is free registration. So even if you just go register and check in and say hello and nose around and see what's happening in the plastics world. So I thank everybody for coming out today. It was certainly such an amazing show. And I will see you next week. We have some more special guests coming up, so stay tuned. Have a great Wednesday, and see you next week, 1 p.m.